Welcome. This is Elizabeth Fulgaro. With me today is Chaplain Lisa Northway, U.S. Army.
Thanks for having me, Elizabeth.
Oh, thanks for being with us. Chaplain Lisa, you were beginning to share with us the spiritual preparation of sorts before those in the surge were crossing over the border into Iraq. Can you continue sharing with us there?
Sure. We had some amazing times of spiritual awakening in that desert that a lot of our folks back home really provided for. Uh, to this day, I say everything comes in a care package. We might be promised certain monies, but I have yet to see much ever materialize. Everything comes in a care package. And when I discovered that there were humble people, everyday American were out there asking for what they could do, I thought, well, if I had these things, I could provide some of those things that some of our service members or who are people of faith or people who are interested in faith might want to go to, that they've heard about, and they got to experience some of that goodness in their hometown and their hometown churches. And so we had 2 women's retreats and 2 men's retreats. We had weekly Bible studies, all these books, all these retreat supplies uh, from the loving hearts and hands of Americans showed up in time to do some amazing things. And in a very rustic place. For instance, one of the women's retreat was called Heart Spa, where women are refreshed in Jesus. And I think that title alone brought probably about 75 to 85 women on a Saturday that were given just a time to do a little bit of free time. We had the same sort of event for men, a prayer retreat, and the funny things about doing something like that we've done before, being raised in the church, you don't have everything. You don't have a lot of these, sometimes all the bells and whistles, but you figure out how to do it differently. So in this, we had 3 spa stations, and because the water was 140 degrees, same as the temperature, just on pallets outside, and even though we only had 2 tiny little bathrooms in the chapel, which was very rare, the fact that we had a chapel with a bathroom, we were able to self-contain, have food brought in by the chaplain assistants, and have that environment protected. So for the men, they could have a same gender retreat, because men talk to each other differently when it's just men. Women talk to each other differently when it's just women. And some in the military, especially for those who had not had safe same-gender relationships, it was such an amazing experience. You imagine the people who go into battle who've never had a really good friend. If you're a woman, a good girlfriend, or a guy, a good guy friend that you can rely on. And this is also a time when trust and cohesiveness is so important. And there were on that camp from time to time an assault, and you can imagine the betrayal when you realize this person wears the same uniform I do. When you think about that, how of course, these are a lot of, the average age of our service members are anywhere from 18, say, to 25, a lot of that age group. If you think about it, if you really thought about it, you probably wouldn't want to assault somebody who also, when they cross the border, will have a weapon and might, in a moment, heated moment, want to retaliate. But as young people, don't always think those through. But certainly, for certain, the wounds of war are not what we always think they are. Sometimes it's what happens on the way to war. And that would be another way of, oh, wow, we have this situation now. Wasn't it hard enough to have to go into combat and to get called up? Not a lot of notice necessarily. Do the train up. And then just as you're crossing the border, be faced with the horrific situation of being that kind of betrayal from a comrade. and getting to that place. How do I cross the border now? If this is what uh, someone will do to me, one of my own comrades would do this to me. How do we get to the next stage? How do we stand shoulder to shoulder and fight this war? Take care take care of another country, another people when we can't even really care for ourselves. And so these retreats, these times we could gather people in the chapel uh, and encourage them and to try to figure out how to move forward when the unfathomable happens to you in your own camp.
So these retreats sounds like they were healing centers. What are the wounds of war that people don't think about? You've already talked about one, but well, it's actually more than one. You've talked about the moral injury of a leader who doesn't have your back, right? You've talked about the betrayal and the sexual injury that can come. What are some of the other wounds of war that you see, and how does that impact? I mean, that doesn't just impact battle, right? And what was your role? What was your role? Like, did they come to you?
They did. And for instance, in our culture, military culture, our regular American culture, it's harder, I believe, in some ways for a male soldier, a man, to come forward and say, I've been sexually assaulted. Someone has attempted to take me out. And I believe when I go back to my room, go back to my tent, that leader or that person is coming for me again. And I remember being with a young man, an NCO, a sergeant. So this was a mid-level leader, just trying to figure out how do I deal with this, and the fear that the person who had attempted to assault him was much higher ranking, and going through the process of being in that space where he had to go through an investigation, and at that time, it's not that long ago. I think even our investigators have a hard time thinking, well, gosh, a lot of people make judgment calls. Well, if it was me, I would have just knocked his block off. And it's like, well, there's a reason why we have regulations. And this NCO understood the purpose of good order and discipline. He had been the one to upheld it, but it wasn't being upheld for him. And getting through that, I'm doing education. I'm training CID investigators to stand down and don't look down on him. Judge him because he didn't just haul off and hit the guy. That's what I do. It's like, well, you really don't know what you do in that situation. So these are some of the situations that would come to me and work through that. So yes, making peace on the way to war. Sometimes the chaos has happened years ago, and sometimes it happens just before you go into battle.
Now you were in the camp that was the gateway. And where did your career then go from there?
Well, just at the end of that 1 year deployment, I remember calling up the contact I had at the chief of chaplain's office. And I remember speaking with Chaplain Good. And I asked him, I said, sir, my plan actually was always to be an active duty Army chaplain. Can you tell me if I could move on out to that place as I'm getting ready to leave Camp Buring and return home as a reserve chaplain? I wouldn't have a job when I got back, and that would be that. And he did all the calculations, and he said, Chaplain Northway, I'm so sorry to inform you, you are 6 months too old for active duty.
Oh dear.
That time has passed. And I remember, fighting back the tears and feeling the tears in my face in that little chapel office at Camp Buring. I thought, well, I'm still a chaplain. I'm still living my destiny. And I'm going to hold fast. I'm still believing somehow it's going to work out. And he was very, very kind to me. And I also found out that there was an opportunity that maybe I could ask to be mobilized again, but at a stateside place. And my parents had just moved from Modesto, California to Colorado, and I realized without a job, I wouldn't have the money to go see my parents out here. Just practical new things I had to think about. I would be with my family, my husband and son, in Fresno, and I had just finished seminary before that, my time in higher education working as a college administrator. So I called my endorser, and he said, well, let's see if there's anything available. He made some phone calls, and we made some contact, and the message I got was, there's nothing here for you at Fort Carson, Colorado, for at least a few years. We've got plenty of reserve chaplains running around here with all the surge and the mobilization, and certainly I was disappointed. And this was about a week or two before I returned home. So I got home. I thought, well, I'm thankful. I'm going to return to my family, and we'll just figure this out. God will figure this out. And I had been home a matter of days. Thanksgiving 2006, and I got a phone call from Fort Carson, and they said, would you come? And I said, I'll be there. I'll be there. And so I ended up reporting April, Easter Sunday of 2007. And moved, which was very risky because these were just mobilization orders, believing something's going to work out. Moved at the day of the Colorado Springs 2007 blizzard, and bought our first home. A few months later, we hear this rumor. A lot of us reserve chaplains heard this rumor. So this is about end of November. We had heard that the Army had raised the age for active duty chaplains to be able to come on board.
Oh, my goodness.
And I thought, well, there's sure is a lot of rumors going around. I'm just going to call Chaplain Good again and ask him, what's going on? And I said, sir, I've heard these rumors around Fort Carson. All the reserve chaplains are talking about it, but I just wanted to confirm because, you did say a year ago that I was 6 months too old. And he said, Chaplain Northway, it's not a rumor.
Oh, yay. Oh, yay.
He says, you've got a week to get your packet in for consideration. And I did a save as on all my documents, sent it in right away. Within 2 weeks, I got the call and said, Chaplain Northway, you're in. You're active duty.
Fabulous. Fabulous. So did you stay then at Fort Carson?
I did. I'm very grateful to those people who saw fit to keep me there. All of us knew as captain chaplains on our first tour, many of us were brought in during that time, that we knew we were going to go do hard things. We knew we were going to Iraq. And I knew it would be just a matter of time I would be crossing that border.
Yourself.
Yes.
Let's continue this next time. Thank you, Chaplain Lisa.
Thank you.